Well, the American mall has been dying for the past several years, but the pandemic might be the final blow unless malls can find a way to reinvent themselves and bring shoppers back. Joining us now is Ethan Chernofsky, the VP of Marketing at Place.ai, all the way from Tel Aviv. Well, good morning anyway from New York. Thank you so much for coming on. Foot traffic is down for brick and mortar stores across sectors. Why do you think that malls still have a chance despite the decline that's been happening well before the pandemic?
So I think there's a few things that are working in the mall's favor. And I think the first is when you look at those top tier malls, pre-pandemic, we were seeing almost across the board growth in January and February of this year. So it wasn't like they were in this weak position pre-pandemic. But then also we are seeing these new concepts and ideas coming to the forefront as classic of ideals of what belongs in a mall are changing. And that's a very positive thing because the more creativity that goes into driving tenant mix within a mall, the more likely that it's going to bring more visitors at better times to create a more sustainable type of strength for this classic piece of the retail mix.
So what do you think the mall of the future actually looks like?
So I think there's a few components. I think we're going to see a lot of tenant types that we hadn't necessarily been used to. So maybe not always finding that classic department store, but seeing a lot more gyms and a lot more co-working spaces in malls. And that's a really positive thing when you think about what do these new types of tenants bring. Or like when you think of a fitness brand like a Planet Fitness, if you have a gym, they're bringing visits primarily on weekdays when malls are traditionally seeing their strength on weekends, or a co-working space bringing repeat visitors who are coming every single day to work. It changes the types of retailers you can put in. So all of a sudden an Office Depot or a CVS or even some sort of grocery format fits within that mall mix, giving lots of types of malls the ability to reinvent themselves in a way that could be more sustainable and more strong for a longer period of time.
You talk about micro-fulfillment. What exactly does that mean?
So micro-fulfillment is the idea of taking advantage of space that you have to enable better logistical support. So if you think of a Macy's and using that location just to sell to the customers that come in, micro-fulfillment would say, hey, take a piece of that store and also use it for distribution. And what that does is it makes the offline retail location much more valuable because it's not just about the ability to meet the customer and provide this experience and to sell goods, which is still the overwhelming majority of how sales happen in the US, but it also enables these other elements like distribution and delivery, cutting costs that have so far made online efforts much less profitable.
A big reason, though, that people may be avoiding malls now is the health concerns of it. And how do malls mitigate that? What do they do to make people feel safe going back and shopping in person, especially in a mall that could get crowded and there's just so much a mixture of people?
So I think there's two pieces to this. The first is you need to follow the highest possible standards in terms of ensuring that health and security and letting customers know that it's there to make sure that they are as safe as possible. But in the longer term, it's also about understanding how do we view the times we come to the mall differently. So for example, we saw Best Buy using appointment shopping earlier on during the recovery period to great effect. And that is a way that can actually limit the number of people in a store or in a location at any given time while focusing on those customers that are the highest likelihood to actually convert and make purchases. So there are a lot of different tactics that malls can use in the short term to try and be as efficient as possible, while in the longer term communicating a message that says, even beyond the pandemic, we're going to still make this a focus. And that is something that really could resonate with lots of shoppers across the country.
So for nostalgia purposes, I am rooting for the malls. I grew up going to the mall, I hate to admit it, almost every weekend. That's just kind of what we did. We were mall rats, as they're called. What do you think about the future of malls? You have so many ideas, but are mall owners trying to actually implement these ideas? Are we going to see WeWork spaces, for example, in a mall? Is that actually happening right now?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really creative, forward-thinking mall owners. When you look at, an Industrious, which is a WeWork that has operated in a lot of malls, and you see them in, the Short Hills Mall in New Jersey, or the Scottsdale Fashion Center in Arizona. And they're bringing a lot of value to those locations. But even the type of aggressive creativity we're seeing from someone like Simon going out to acquire a JCPenney, this is the time for aggressive and new and different ideas to try and create something new and better. But even more, when we think of those lower performing malls, there are a lot of players in the space who are saying we can do something different with that box, whether it's anchoring ourselves around a health tenant or anchoring ourselves even around a school. And the second you start thinking differently about the mall, you create this whole range of new opportunities that could completely reinvigorate this sector. And I think it's one of the big silver linings that will come out of COVID when we think about the malls, especially considering how hard they were hit during the pandemic, is that they could have a much brighter future.
All right. Ethan Chernofsky, VP of Marketing over at Place.ai, all the way from Tel Aviv. Great to have you on. Appreciate it.